Welcome to But Enough About Me, a podcast about other people. My name is Tyler Andrews. I'm a Nashville-based photographer, husband, and father. I'm trying to collect the stories of everyone around me, whether we're best friends or total strangers. I want to know what made you the person you are today. Welcome back to the show, guys. I am back in my office with my equipment and back fully in charge of my domain. I am the master of my... I don't even like Seinfeld, and here I am quoting it. At any rate, I'm back, and everything is great and calm, and I love it. I should probably knock on some wood. I am so excited to share today's story with you guys. This guest is a very good friend of mine, somebody that I never would have guessed in a million years that I would get to know, and when I did, and ever since, it has always been a very great privilege to count him among my friends. I'm particularly pleased with this intro because I know for a fact that if he ever listens to it, he is going to be blushing the entire time because he hates being the center of attention. And that makes me so happy. The irony, of course, is that as much as he doesn't like being the center of attention, today's guest is a musician and a very, very successful one at that. His first band was a band called Delirious, which, if you were into Christian music in the late 90s and throughout the aughts, I guarantee you've heard their stuff. You've probably even sung along to some of their songs in church. They've played in front of hundreds of thousands of people, sold millions of records. Very successful band. Since then, he's moved on to other things. He is currently a U.S. citizen, congratulations, and has 3 beautiful kids and a lovely wife, and I am just so tickled that he was willing to come share his story with all of you guys, because that's a little out of character for him. I'm so excited. Guys, my very, very good friend, Mr. Jon Thatcher. You can adjust it. You will not hurt my feelings. You've spent a lot more time in front of mics than I have.
It's good.
Okay. I'm going to turn you up a little bit. Thank you for doing this.
A pleasure.
You say that.
How long is it going to take?
Well, it's up to you, but typically we'll start sweating in about an hour and a half. Okay. So usually that's when people call it.
It's like a sauna, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets there. Thankfully, it's afternoon, so the sun is mostly down. I mean, it's behind the tree line.
Is that why we're just wearing towels?
No, that's unrelated. Oh, I didn't think this would be that interview. John, when were you born?
July of 1976, a very hot summer. There was also a ladybird infestation. Ladybug. No, what do you call it here?
Well, I mean the little red bug.
The little
dots.
red bugs.
Ladybug.
Yeah. We call them ladybirds.
But they're not birds. It seems pretty...
They're not ladies either, right?
Well, theoretically, half of them are.
Half of them? 50% right.
Yeah. So, 76. And how many siblings do you have?
I am one of 5. I have 3 elder sisters and 1 younger brother, 12 years younger than me. So I was raised kind of almost as an only child, because I have 3 older sisters and I was the first boy.
Right.
And then my younger brother was 12 years younger. And so that was a little encore.
What's the gap between your oldest sister?
There is 18 years between my youngest brother and my oldest sister.
So you said there's 12 years between you and your brother?
Mm-hmm.
So 6 years between
you
and your sister. Wow. But I mean, there's 3 sisters, so that was pretty one right after the other. It was
regimented.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I know my dad wanted his son.
Yeah.
And so they kept on trying until they got a son.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
And then they tried some more.
Accidentally.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ben.
I was gonna say, do you tell Ben that do you tell him he's a mistake or an accident? Because it's a big difference.
I don't want to answer
that. What? So you're not from America?
I'm from England, from the south coast, from a little seaside village called Rustington. But if anyone asks me, I'm from Brighton, because that's the biggest town. And then if anyone asks me that's from America, I just say London, because it's close enough.
So, what was young John like? Very young, preschool. Do you know?
I have little memories,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been told that, as I said, I was born in a very hot summer, and I was happy as long as I was left alone. So if you picked me up or gave me any attention, then I would let you know that I was unhappy. So there are some parallels today with that, but yeah, I think I was a low maintenance child. There was a lot of chaos and a lot of life in my family with three older sisters, and I could fly under the radar and be unnoticed, but then I could dip in when I needed to. So it was a good upbringing, lots of good memories.
Did your sisters? I mean, I would imagine with three older sisters that they probably wanted to dote on you.
Yeah, for the first year of my life, I was called Emily, and they put me in doll's clothes and pushed me around in their baby's pram. That's not that far from the truth. So, yeah,
That's so English too.
yeah, there are pictures of me in doll's clothes and with my sister pushing me around.
Wow.
I was their little baby brother.
Yeah. Tell me about your folks.
Father is a pastor. Mother is a mother. It was my polarized version of my upbringing was dad was the worker and the wait till your dad gets home, then you'll be in trouble father. My mother was the hands on deck, just sorting things out day to day. And yeah, grew up in a Christian household, my dad being a pastor. And so church was a central part of my life. My grandparents started a church, which then my father inherited.
Oh, wow.
And my grandparents had quite a dramatic testimony from the war. And so grew up in this faith-based community, and that was second nature to me.
Yeah. So were your grandparents still around when you were
Yes.
growing up? Are they still around now?
No.
Okay.
No. They passed away in probably the late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to know them. It wasn't...
Mm-hmm.
That's good. So with Dad being a pastor, is that his only occupation primarily?
It was the only occupation I knew growing up. He was an engineer and a school teacher before then, but by the time I was old enough to know that was his occupation. My dad is and was devoted to the church. That was his life. He didn't have and doesn't have any hobbies or really any friends.
Really?
He has given his life to the church. And that's something I both really respect and have some sadness over.
Mm-hmm.
But he does what he believes, and I have nothing but respect for that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, when your occupation is also your vision and your calling, you can't. I think it was very hard for Dad ever to switch off.
Yeah.
So an example of that is my dad doesn't drink because my dad is a pastor, and he will say, well, I don't know who's going to call me at what time of night, and if I've had a few beers or a beer, then I'm not going to be fully present and I can't get in a car and go and see them. So
Yeah.
he was and is 100% committed to his people. And there were some rubs growing up where church was first and almost family was second. And so there was some hurt and some resentment there.
Mm-hmm.
But as an adult, I understand it,
Yeah.
and I respect him for it.
So tell me about school. You guys have primary school.
We have primary school. When you start there when you're about 4 years of age.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's young.
So it's young. I my sisters were all at school, so I wanted to go to school and be a big boy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very exciting at the time, but I did not excel at school. I always got an A for effort, but I think my teachers always wanted me to be smarter than I actually am. And so through the academic system, I scraped through.
Textbooks aren't your thing.
Textbooks aren't my thing.
Yeah.
Speaking in microphones is not my thing.
You're doing it very well.
It's because you're here.
Yeah.
But, if you put a sheet of paper in front of me today and asked me to read it out loud,
Mm-hmm.
it would be embarrassing for everyone.
Really?
Yeah. My brain is just not wired that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is fear. Even I'll walk into a meeting today and someone say, "Oh, read that paragraph," and I'll just freeze.
Wow.
So there was, in growing up in school, that was something that is, you'd all be reading through the textbook.
Oh, yeah.
And then whenever it came to, well, Jonathan, read, everyone would go, which they were right. But it wasn't a good introduction.
No, that doesn't reinforce good.
No. And so I would be the guy that was skipping ahead and trying to work out which paragraph I was going to read.
Absolutely.
And read it 4 times.
Yep.
So rather than reading it, I'd be memorizing it. And then they'd always switch to the paragraph, or they would stop before me, or they would change the rotation. And it never works.
Did you get in trouble?
No, being a pastor's son,
Mm-hmm.
it was like wearing your Sunday best every day of the week. And so I never wanted to bring shame or disrespect my family and my family's beliefs. So I stayed within the lines,
Mm-hmm.
and primarily out of fear, because I was afraid of letting people down.
Mm. What was your town called again?
Rustington.
Rustington. How many people were in school in Rustington?
In my secondary school, there were 1,000 people.
Secondary being high school?
High school, yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's not
Mm-hmm.
tiny.
Yeah. And my parents sent me to the community school,
Okay.
which had a very bad reputation. But my parents were brilliant. They decided that they wanted to live right in the middle of the community. So that was both geographically and financially. They wanted a house that anyone could come and visit.
Mm-hmm.
And so we lived right in the middle of the community. And rather than sending your children to the safe posh school,
Right.
they sent us all to the normal school that had an awful reputation. And there were a lot of people within the church that found that very difficult.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because it was setting an example that they didn't want to follow.
Oh, yeah.
But I really respect my parents' choices there. Even they still live in, well, my mother passed away last year, but my father still lives in the house that I grew up in.
Okay.
And so as you get older, there's chances to, you have a little bit more money and you can upgrade, but you don't need the house. But my parents have never really chased that carrot. And so it's beautiful to see their contentment.
That's cool. How old was your mother when she passed?
She was 72.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did she ever do anything outside of the home, career-wise?
No. Well, she was a nursery nurse in her early 20s.
Okay, so before being a mom.
Yeah.
So once she was a mom, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
What was she like?
She was fun and she was kind.
Yeah.
Dad was and is he he's the solid, strict, firm. You know where you stand with Dad. You know what opinion he's gonna give you before he gives it. But my mother she was playful and young and fun, and they really complemented each other. But she also never drank, and she would say, "I'm silly enough as it is." And she was not wrong.
Yeah.
She was, often people would think that she was drunk because she didn't carry the fear and the heaviness that most people carry. She just had this giddy, light-hearted, playful. Yeah, she was a beautiful spirit.
When, maybe jumping ahead, when did you start drinking? Now that makes it sound like you have a
this
serious
is taking
problem.
a turn.
But we're sitting here, each of us with a drink. At what point did that happen?
About 2:00 in the afternoon.
No, you know what I mean.
I know. My uncle growing up was a role model of mine as well, and he was the fun uncle.
Which?
My mother's brother.
Okay.
And he lived 2 doors down.
Oh, cool.
And he was a musician, and he was is a wild card.
Okay.
And so he would take me fishing.
Oh.
And so I think I had my first Budweiser at about the age of 8 years old.
That's what I expected.
Yeah, and it was it was an awful experience.
As it should be.
I think I said it tasted like beans.
Really?
But yeah, so my uncle was the crazy musician and my dad was the solid pastor.
Yeah.
And so, well, actually, that reminds me that my grandfather's one was a conscientious objector.
In World War II?
Yes, I believe. And the other one lied about his age to fight in the Korean War.
Wow.
So
which one was which?
My father's was the conscientious objector.
Okay, as a pastor, he objected to taking part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you put me somewhere in the middle of those two sets of DNA.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense of who I am and how confused I am. Yeah. So, and I'm thankful for both sides.
Yeah. So, primary school. Get into where does primary school? How does it break down in England?
Primary school is from basically 4 until 11.
Okay.
Then 11 till 15 or 16.
Yeah.
And then at 16, you either go to what we would call college, and then you go on to university from college. But most people, if you're not academically brilliant, you just get a job after school. So at the age of 15 or 16, you just get a trade and get a job, and you don't bother spending any more money on education.
Is that still the same way today?
Not entirely sure because I haven't lived there and I'm not raising kids there, but I would assume it's more closer to that than it is the American system.
Right. All right. So you went to primary school and then into secondary. So you said at 11 or 12?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's a bunch of transition happening in life in general right then.
Yep.
And what do you remember of that?
I remember a lot of fear.
Yeah.
I remember I would plot out we had a lower school and a main school. And when I was going to bed, I would be mapping out how I was going to get from class to class and trying to make sure I'd get there in time and kind of dotting my I's and crossing my T's mentally and just being prepared so I didn't have to be as scared.
That's a serious level of commitment.
Yeah. The humour also in England is very different, as you know. But
thank God.
If growing up in the English public school system, it was if you were being picked on, then you were in a good place.
Right.
If you weren't being picked on, then you were probably then you had a problem.
You were below contempt.
So, lunchtime would be if you leave a bag on the floor, someone bigger than you would pick it up and throw it on a roof.
Okay.
And that would be a compliment.
Yeah.
That would be like pulling the pretty girl's hair.
Yeah.
And so then you'd have to climb up a drain pipe, and and bags would always be on roofs and in dustbins.
Yeah.
That was just all part of a lunchtime.
So, and a slight aside here. Of course, buildings in England are older than buildings in America, by and large. I know it sounds like such a dumb thing to say, but it's worth saying. I mean, I don't know that I've ever been in a school. I don't know that I've been in a school building that's older than probably 80 or 90 years old. Did you go to schools? Were churches like that? Well,
churches, yes, but our school got burnt down every summer.
Wait, what?
Someone in our community liked burning down things, and the school was always a target, which was great for us growing up.
You're not kidding?
No, our science block got burnt down once while I was at school, and our lower school got burnt down once as well.
Oh my gosh!
This was the best day ever when you turn up at school and you can't go in.
So, wait. So did they? But was it confirmed that it was arson?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh! And they never caught anybody?
I think they did catch people, but we weren't too bothered. We just got a few. Well, some huts appeared in the field.
Yeah,
and we had to go in those huts.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Tell me about growing up there. Interests, girls, music, hobbies.
Music was always part of my upbringing. I think primarily again from being in church. So from an early age, I grew up around music and it was second nature. And so when I was about 10, I got my first bass guitar, and it was too big for me to play, and it was too heavy, but that was the instrument that I gravitated towards, and I started playing that probably at the age of 14 in the church band. And so you're on a stage. Actually, we weren't on a stage at that time, but you're playing in front of 100 people.
Sure.
Which suddenly becomes very normal, and you're playing as part of a team, and you're playing with older people and more experienced people, and so that was just second nature. And every Sunday, and I'd be learning the songs.
Yeah.
And that was that was my early teens, and then from there I began to like real music.
Because there's none of that in the church.
So, and I hate to say, no, I don't hate to say, it's not a very cool story, but my gateway band was Striper.
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
So,
product of the times.
Yeah,
it's fine.
So Striper opened my eyes to, wow, church music doesn't have to just be like this.
Sure.
And actually, fast forward. So I'm backstage with my brother at a Foo Fighters concert, and
your brother is a very successful musician.
Yes. Define successful.
Okay, he's making a living.
Okay, a good living.
Good living.
Yep. So I'm backstage with him, and he introduces me to Mr. Hawkins.
Okay.
Who's the drummer of the Foo Fighters.
Taylor Hawkins.
And he throws me under the bus to embarrass me. He said, "Oh, this is my brother. He played in a Christian rock band." That was what he said, and I am utterly horrified. And Taylor Hawkins goes, "I love Christian rock, man. I grew up on it. It's absolutely incredible." And then he starts this conversation about Striper. And I'm there thinking, is he making fun of me?
Yeah.
Is this all a joke? Is everyone just laughing at me? Am I just...
Right.
Is this,
Where's the cameras?
Is this all
Somebody's
a setup?
watching.
But he goes off, about 3 minutes on totally genuine. And I'm just looking at my feet thinking, I don't know where to take this. So
That's fantastic. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to chase that down more, but I'm not going to. We're going to go back to secondary school. Classes. Did you have any classes that you liked? I mean, I know you said you weren't academically adept, but
I didn't use the word adept because I don't know what it means. But thank you for putting those words in my mouth.
Absolutely. I just want to make you sound smarter.
Thank you. I need all the help I can get.
I wanted you to sound eloquent.
Oh, thank you for that word again. No, I struggled through, but art, I was never any good at music, ironically.
Wait, what?
Oh, well, in my music lessons, it was about reading music and about playing glockenspiel.
Oh, well, bassists don't need to know that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Glockenspiel.
Yeah.
I would think that the English had enough of German things after...
Moving on.
Yeah.
So we... yeah, recorders and glockenspiels, that was the music class. Neither of them I'm particularly inspired by. But, yeah, art was my get out of jail free card at school. And at that time I was into art, and I grew up on a skateboard.
Okay.
So that was before skateboarding was skateboarding.
Yeah.
That was when it was more of an obscure hobby rather than a part of our subculture. But skateboarding and music went hand in hand for me.
Yeah.
And so they were the indie culture before indie was mainstream.
Yes.
So that was part of my identity, was always finding the underdog. And it's the cliche of like something before it gets popular, and when it gets popular,
move on.
You move on very quickly and have very strong opinions.
How much of and I imagine I probably know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How much of American culture was influencing things in England at the time? How much were you inundated by that? Not
knowing it, but saying that's a great question, because it was very American influenced.
Yeah.
The skateboarding culture.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, that would have been late 80s?
Yeah. And late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
So yeah, the American skateboard culture was massive, and also growing up in England, there was a big respect for America. Growing up on the A-Team and Baywatch and Knight Rider.
Oh, yeah.
They were, we look back and laugh now, but they were they made America look amazing.
Yeah.
And so there was this grass is always greener illusion or perception that we loved.
Yeah. So you're good at art?
I enjoyed art. I failed art.
Wait a minute. You just said it was your get out of jail free card.
Well, yeah, I scraped through.
Okay.
But I then went on to college.
Yeah. Is it 16?
16, 17. You do 2 years where you study on what you were good at.
Okay.
And for me, I thought that was art and philosophy. And again, I've scraped through both of them.
Okay.
Didn't excel. And art and ego went hand in hand for me. I remember submitting a piece and my art teacher told me that it was shit. Which it was.
In those words?
In those words.
Wow.
And I stood up and said, I'm really happy to hear from you, but, I'd like to hear some more constructive criticism, and I'll be in the canteen, and if you want to have a conversation with me that's a bit more adult, then come and meet me.
Wow.
So, yeah, that wasn't...
Did the conversation happen?
He came down to the canteen
Yeah.
and said I could have found some better words.
Well, good on him.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
But he was right.
He was right. I'm sorry, Mr. Gilbert.
That learning how to take that kind of criticism is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Did that help you?
It made me fight.
Mm-hmm.
And again, being part of the underdog subculture, that was all part of the grit.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't worth fighting for, then it wasn't worth anything.
Yeah. So college. So you went 2 years there?
2 years there, scraped through what we call A-levels, but played in bands and...
Like what? What bands?
Grunge was big at the time.
Heck yeah, it
Grunge
was.
and acid jazz. Those were the two things.
Together?
No.
Okay, all right.
No. So I was still very clean cut, and am still very clean cut, but...
You were a skateboarder
Yeah.
who liked grunge and acid jazz,
Mm-hmm.
and you were clean cut.
Mm-hmm. Well, straight edge was also a thing at that time,
That's true.
and that lined up with my Christian beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
But I got my outlet through the physicality of skateboarding and the emotional output of music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did blur the line slightly, but I had some healthy get outs.
Yeah.
So, and it was also rubbing shoulders with people that were taking the drugs and doing the stuff. I was taking them ambiently. You know?
You were able to be on the periphery and experience it without having to do it yourself?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's better said. But which at the time made me feel like, oh, well, I'm a better person.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
oh, no, I don't take drugs.
Yeah.
But it was, I just like being close to people that took them.
Would 17-year-old Jonathan have responded well to being told he was self-righteous?
No.
I'm just curious.
No, a 42-year-old, 3-year-old John wouldn't either.
Yeah.
But I have learnt a lot. I have hidden a lot behind my beliefs, and I am ashamed and sorry for that. But I also don't beat myself up about it because I didn't know any better.
Yeah. So somewhere in here, I know this is about the right time. Did you go on to university?
I enrolled in university in a photography class, photography degree.
Oh, okay.
And then I was playing in a band called the Cutting Edge Band, which later on came to be Delirious. And that was basically a local youth event it was just a church event, and it was getting some popularity, and it was fun you were around the energy and feeling like you were doing something good and changing the world and being positive. And that was getting some traction at the same time that I was starting college. And I had to make a decision between touring and playing in the band. No, between touring and being at college.
Mm-hmm.
And touring took over.
How did your folks feel about that?
Well, my college was 7 miles away from my house, and I used to cycle there.
Sounds like you.
Not because I was a fitness freak, just because it was what we did. And I remember having a conversation with my tutor, who was also a bass player, and in the interview I had said, I'm also a musician and trying to juggle these two things. And he was like, "Oh yeah, we can make that work. That's not a problem." And so when I came to him and said it was actually I needed to take a week off to do a recording.
Yeah.
And he said, "You can't take a week off. You have to choose." And so I cycled home that day thinking about it, wondering what I was living at home with my parents, wondering how that would play out. And Dad's basically said, it was always Dad's dream for me to get a degree, because that I always thought it was my dad's dream for me to get a degree. But he looked me in the eye and said, "I'll support you whichever way you go."
Yeah.
I cycled in the next day.
That was that.
That was that.
So now you're in, was it still Cutting Edge Band at the time?
Somewhere in between the Cutting Edge Band and Delirious.
I have to ask.
Yeah.
We're friends.
Yeah.
So you won't take this personally.
No.
Who was it that pointed out that that's an awful name?
Which one?
Cutting Edge Band. Oh, come on. That's not cool.
Yeah, but
Delirious is fine.
well,
It's a much better name than Cutting Edge Band.
yeah. Well, somewhere we agreed with you. We were playing at the event called Cutting Edge.
Oh, okay. So you were the Cutting Edge Band.
We were the Cutting Edge Band. We weren't defining ourselves. And if you listen to our music, you would soon realise that that was pretty delusional.
So Delirious eventually would become a huge band internationally.
Mm-hmm.
At that point in time, I mean, you guys needed to tour, you were recording. Did you have any idea? I mean, I guess you don't have any idea, but at the time, but other than dreams, did it feel like there was wind under your wings? That sounds so...
No, it didn't.
Did it feel like you had momentum?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
You begin to believe your own press.
Sure.
And that's very addictive. But there is also the insecure little voice in your head saying you're just pretending.
Yeah.
And if people really knew.
Yeah.
And there is also the ego that says we should be playing main stage, or
right.
we should be selling as much as that band, or we should be on that tour, or we should be on that chart.
Yeah.
And you never get to the place where you take a deep breath and go, there you go. We did it, boys.
Yeah.
There is always a carrot on a stick in front of you.
Interesting. So how old were you at that point? 17, 18?
Mm-hmm.
So at 17 or 18 years old, what was your, even if you didn't state it out loud, what was your goal? What is it you wanted to do in music?
It was to bring light into a dark world. It was to bring heaven to earth.
It's a big goal.
It's a pretty big goal. I believed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys got going. How quickly did things start to pick up?
In hindsight, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, it's gig by gig, week by week, tour by tour.
Yeah.
And so, if you were to make the film, you would cut to the stadiums.
We do a quick montage here.
Yeah, you would do the montage here, but there was lots of driving.
Yeah.
There was lots of sleeping on people's floors. There was lots of not sleeping. There was lots of sharing beds with fellow bandmates. There was... it was not glamorous at all.
Yeah.
And especially playing the English church scene.
So I was going to ask, is that what you got? You guys were playing churches?
We would go around and play churches, and that's where we developed our fan base.
I know church in America isn't like church anywhere else.
Yes.
How big are big churches in England? I mean, do they have mega churches?
I think they do now.
Yeah.
Church in England, from my perspective, there's churches for old people.
Okay.
And so the cultural thing, growing up in England, the fact that my dad was a pastor got me the nickname of Jesus at school. It was Jesus or the devil.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
it's that. So when, like we learnt German at school, and when you speak German, you have to say, my father is a, and, everyone puts in, and I realized that you didn't actually have to tell the truth. And so my father was always a teacher
Sure.
and not a vicar.
Yeah.
Because that was much easier to. So, and if anyone asked me what my father did, yeah, he's a teacher.
Yeah.
And that was my middle ground of truth. But yeah, so Christian music and Christianity in England was totally frowned upon. There was nothing, there was no subculture that embraced it. There was no marketplace for it. It was just, he plays in a Christian band.
And I would imagine, especially around young people.
Yeah, and it was cruel.
Yeah.
It was cruel. So to be a Christian growing up in England, you couldn't be lukewarm. There was no. It just didn't work. You either had to be the zealous, self-righteous, Bible-bashing Christian,
Yeah.
or you weren't one.
That's so interesting. I have never heard, I mean, this is my ignorance, but I've never heard somebody described that way that wasn't American.
Okay.
Those are terms that I would always associate with American Christian subcultures.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So playing in a Christian band was not cool. And so we had a fan base that was primarily Christians.
Sure.
And so we knew, we were aware of that. But we also, there was no Christian music scene in England. So we had to play, to be popular, we had songs in the regular, your equivalent of the Billboard charts.
Sure.
And we played the regular theatres and clubs and arenas, because there were no mega churches or Christian versions of that in England.
Did you do that? Did you do that to eat? Did you do that for fun? Did you do that to gain popularity?
All of the above. We did it because we believed it.
Yeah.
It was our passion.
And were you playing your music, or were you playing pop or something else?
It was our music.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were able to play, I mean, because it was worship music largely.
Yes, that was the genesis of it. But when we would play these other arenas outside of the church, we would use phrases like taking the walls down of the church, which really we were just taking a church service into a building that wouldn't normally have a church service.
Right.
But there was a belief that we were taking down the walls of the church.
Where did it go from there?
We got signed to EMI in America.
Yeah.
That was a big change for us, because suddenly there was a marketplace and a culture that embraced us, and that was both a blessing and a curse. So we could come over here and we could play a festival and be on a label and we could belong. But that we never really belonged in England. We had to fight for everything, and we had to measure up with everything else that was around us, and also had to climb the hill of, you're a Christian band.
Right.
You must be rubbish.
Right.
So that was, a compliment would be, they're a Christian band and they're okay.
Right. Yeah. They're really good for a Christian band.
That was the highest compliment you could get.
Yeah. So do you remember when your first trip to America was?
I remember our first trip to California, and that was playing one of the big churches in somewhere in California. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't as a rock band. That was as a more of a ministry, and that was a sleeping in a guest home kind of scenario.
So is that early on then? I mean, I
Mhm.
guess really early on?
Yep.
So we're talking mid-90s at this point?
Hmm. Probably late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But then coming over, being signed to EMI,
Mm-hmm.
you have a little bit of a swagger about you, and you have people are interested because you're from outside of the culture.
Yeah.
And we had a different accent on many levels, but we didn't even realize we had an accent, but that was
Yeah.
we were different
Yeah.
without trying to be.
Sure. For those that have never really been involved in touring music life, I mean, you already touched on it a little bit. Traveling in vans, lots of driving,
Mm-hmm.
sleeping in not ideal conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when I've had conversations with musicians, it always seems like they go, "Oh, I've been to Minneapolis. I don't really remember Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
I know what the inside of the venue looked like in Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't remember the rest of the city."
Yeah.
Is that your experience as well?
You could say that about my 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
I was 20 and 30, but I don't really. Everything becomes a little bit of a blur.
Yeah.
Not because of the rock and roll reasons, but just because of. I read somewhere that the brain can only compute 10,000 faces,
Huh.
and then after that, it just kind of gives up.
Yeah.
So I think I've computed my 10,000 faces, and I've seen my venues, and sometimes I will turn up in a place and will just have that moment of shock saying, I've been here before. And I will have actually been there before.
Right,
It won't be
right.
some spiritual awakening. It will be, oh yeah, I have been here before. I'll be in a hotel. I think I've been here before.
Yeah.
And an airport, just.
Just round numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Ballpark it.
Mm.
How many hotels have you stayed in?
I have no idea. But you're on tour buses most of the time.
Sure.
So staying in a hotel means you go to the room to shower
Yep.
after the show, and then you get back on the bus.
Ugh. And that's why you lose track of where you are,
Mhm.
is the rhythm of
Yeah.
you go to sleep in one city and you wake up in another.
Yeah, it's not your job to really know where you are. It's your job to be on stage. And I do have a lot of regrets that I've traveled the world and didn't really see anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some times when I can recount stories and I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But also, there's a lot of empty blank space in my head.
Before we move on too much, give me some good road stories. Someone being irresponsible, a prank.
There was I don't think I'll ask you to edit this out later on. I'll have to think about it. A certain crew member. Well, I got on really well with our crew.
Yeah.
I got on really well with the band, but the crew were also really fun to be around, and they had a different perspective in life. As a band, you can often get disgruntled, and the glass is always half empty. It's like, why are we on this bus? We should be on a better bus. And
Yeah.
why are we all in economy? We should surely be,
Yeah.
Why? And so there's always, like I said, there's always that carrot. But the crew are just there, and they're happy to be there, and they're making good money.
Yeah.
And they've got little, they had their responsibilities, but it was.
It's not my union. I can't touch that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got on. I really loved our crew and still do. But there was one time when one of our crew members, who remain anonymous, he took on the alter ego of Bubble Man.
Oh.
And he loved hot tubs. And he would get in hot tubs day and night anywhere he could find. Because, again, we were coming from England to America, and it was a novelty. We don't have that many hot tubs in England.
Oh.
Sorry to
I'm sorry.
burst the bubble.
Yeah.
But so he would get into hot tubs and he would put bubble bath in it. He would remove all his clothes and he would walk around wearing nothing but a suit of bubbles.
Well,
Not the story you were expecting.
no, that's perfect. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
A more serious story from the road is we did a crusade.
Mm-hmm.
What a great word.
Yeah.
It means everything to people.
Yeah, it's got a lot of baggage.
Yeah, we did a crusade it was in Cambodia.
Oh, wow.
And we were part of something bigger than us. But we were there with someone else. But we turned up and we were playing a show and they turned all the lights off and then all the house lights came on and they asked everyone to leave and there were armed guards at the doors.
Wow.
And at the time, my mentality was like, wow, this is what it's like to be a Christian. You know, maybe I'm going to take a bullet for this. Maybe,
Right.
maybe, and there was a stick your heels in rather than run for the exit. There was we must really be doing something meaningful because there are people with guns that don't want us to be here.
Right.
And there was a pride and what I would have called a righteous anger at the time. It was like, no, so we carried on and we played the gig acoustically.
Oh, wow.
Which
in the dark.
Good for a bass player.
No. Did you have an acoustic?
I didn't. Just played really hard. Yeah, it was probably a good gig for the fans. But so we just sung songs acoustically.
Yeah.
Which really annoyed everyone else. But in the moment, we believed we were doing something eternal, and I'm not saying we were or we weren't, but if I was in that situation today, I think I would say, people don't want us to be here. This is not our country. Let's be respectful, and let's leave quietly, and let's be honouring to them.
So what caused that change?
I think part of it is death of ego.
Okay.
For me to find the truth, I've had to let go of the truth. And same with God. To find God, I've had to let go of him. And for me, that scenario, whether we did the right or the wrong thing, I see that we held on tight rather than letting go and saying, there's something bigger happening here. It was like, let's take control of this and let's become martyrs, because that's the highest compliment we could have got anyway.
Sure.
And there is some disgust that I look back on that and say, yeah, that was really unkind and disrespectful. But again, in that moment, that was the hand I played.
Yeah.
It's really what's the word? I was going to say interesting, but that's a filler word. It's quite bewildering to go back and talk about this stuff. I don't talk about this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And it feels a bit like a out-of-body experience.
You talking about
The delirious.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure you can hear it, but there's a respect for who I was and for what I believed, but there is also a sadness. And I live in that tension of, I no longer have that naivety and that innocence that I had then. And I wish I did, but I don't. And it's not, I don't have the story of rock and roll and prostitution and rock bottom.
Yeah.
I have the story of life just didn't play out the way I thought it was going to. So I guess a part of that is I got married to my childhood sweetheart at the age of 21.
Okay.
She was American, and we had been probably known each other since we were 14.
Why was she in the UK?
Her parents, her dad was also a pastor, and she
Oh,
was at one of these Christian conferences.
okay.
And so the Christian world is small out there in England.
Right.
Being the foreigner, she was very noticeable, and we connected. And so, yeah, we were dating through the early delirious days, and that was very exciting, and getting signed and falling in love and getting married. But then touring means being away. Again, I followed probably my parents' example, which is ministry first. And when your ministry and your ego and your career and your financial status all enmeshed, then that's not a very healthy place to be.
Right.
So I made some decisions that I regret now, which was I didn't prioritize my marriage because I wanted to save the world. Looking back, I am sorry for that. That was my diet. Those were the people that were around me, and that was the goal I was aiming for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was married for about 15 years, and we had two amazing children together and one not so amazing. I've always wanted to say that.
But you're not going to say which one it is.
No, I'm not going to. They know.
They know.
Yeah.
I have 3 amazing kids and one other.
Yeah, laughing at our own jokes. Yeah.
I know that at least one of my sons will listen to this. So it's not, if you're listening to this, it's not you.
Yeah. So I was talking to my psychologist, and he said, so if you could go back in time, what would you change and when would you change it?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's such a cruel question.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, I guess you're bringing awareness to me, so I go, yeah, I am thankful for the hand that I've been dealt. I am learning the attitude of gratitude. A good 12-stepism.
Yeah.
But I sincerely believe it.
Yeah.
Rather than wishing it was otherwise, I'm wanting to be thankful for what is in my hands. And if I count my blessings, I have so many blessings.
Sure.
But also if I count what I've lost, there is a lot of pain. And that's a dilemma and a decision that I have to make daily.
Which one you're going to count?
Yep.
When the band dissolved, is that when you came to America?
Yes. Yep. Pretty much. We had always talked about moving to America, my wife being American. And so when the band ended, we saw that it was our time to start afresh. And, maybe I could become the husband and the father that I've never been. And so moving here, that was my motivation. That didn't play out how I thought it would.
Right.
And ended up getting divorced a couple of years after moving here. And then the band that I moved here to join, that also didn't work out. A story for another time. But so I was lost, and I was hurt, and I was angry, and I was lonely.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is when I found God, or when I began to find God, because I had to let go. I had to let go of a lot of things that I held on to very tightly. My marriage being one of those.
Sure.
For me, there was a lot of shame. I didn't want to be divorced. I didn't want that to be the story for my children. I didn't want my parents to have to talk about that. I didn't. That was not the script that I wanted to write for myself. So I held on to that for too long. But then when I did hit rock bottom in my faith and in my being, that was when I could really start breathing and living.
It's about when I got to know you.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't talk when you first met me.
I just assumed you were quiet.
Yeah, which I am as well.
That too.
Yeah.
How do you know when
should have ended there.
Yeah, really. And that's it. That's all there is. That's the end of Jon Thatcher. What? How do you know when you've hit bottom? Because you bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you stop bouncing. To use your answer, yeah, maybe. I think there are levels, but how do you know when you've hit rock bottom? I think it's when you've got nothing left.
Yeah.
When all of your previous supports and survival techniques have failed you.
Mm.
And one of my survival techniques was my religion. I know the answers and I get to hold on to these and I get to believe this truth, which don't want to disrespect or, that was right for me for a stage, but I've got to a stage where, another 12-step isn't, but letting go and letting God,
mm-hmm.
which to the wrong ears, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
But it just sounds like a cliche and it just sounds so trite. And if I told myself that 10 years ago, I'd have just shook my head and gone, oh, it's a lovely slogan.
Mm.
But that has, to find God, I've had to lose him.
Is that about control for you?
A lot, partly, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of, I had created a God that was like a nice little puppy that you fed and it made you feel good and made you feel appreciated, and I knew how to control it. I knew that if you painted within the lines, then you would get this reward, and it wasn't until my marriage and my career fell apart until I could actually really begin to see a true God. Again, not saying that the God I believed in wasn't the true God, but I don't know, I'll get all tripped up.
You had a very limited perspective, and you've gained more perspective.
Yeah.
Are you still in music?
I'm recovering.
You're a recovering musician?
I think I would class myself as a recovering musician and a recovering Christian. I still love both of those things.
Yeah.
But I don't want my ego or identity to be entwined in them.
Explain.
For me, being a professional musician, it inflates the ego, whether you like it or not. And I was only on the outskirts of the spotlight.
Well, you played bass.
I played bass,
yeah.
Which to me is the best spot to be.
Yeah.
Because you get the highs without having to pay the full price of it. I can walk into a coffee shop today in Franklin, Tennessee, probably nowhere else in the world, but someone would go, oh, that's the bass player in Delirious.
Yeah.
And they could come up and say, your music really was meaningful to me.
Sure.
And I'll get that little pat on the back and go, oh, that felt good.
Yeah.
But I could also sit in the same coffee shop and no one would notice me.
Right.
So there's just this nice balance of being able to live your life without having to be on show all the time. It's nice to have a lanyard around your neck. It's nice to call a restaurant and they say, "I know who you are."
Yeah.
It's, as much as I hate it, it's nice to go to a church and be shown the front row.
Yeah.
And you go, "Oh," and it's nice to, when the pastor wants to shake your hand at the end because of what you've been part of.
Yeah.
But that's all real and that's all honest, but it wasn't good. I became smug. I became self-righteous, and I am self-righteous, and I don't need to feed that part of myself. So although I love music, and I am still playing, I'm playing in a band called E Nation. Check out the website and the socials.
We'll plug it later.
I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Google it. Which is why we're here.
You're just the bassist.
On the 12th of October 2000. He's checking.
You made me panic. I was like, is it the 12th? Oh, no.
I was going to promote something. That's why I'm here, right?
Sorry, yeah.
This gets to the mean.
Yeah, let's talk about the new album.
Talk about the new record. Well, it was produced by a guy called, and it's very honest and very vulnerable, and it's taking it. It's the record we've always wanted to make as a band.
Oh my god!
I think the fans are going to love it, and new fans. I think it's going to open up a new audience. And I think it's going to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a modern classic.
Modern classic. Yeah.
Just a total aside, I feel really bad for musicians because, and actors and actresses too, because they have to, it's their job to promote and to do that and to say those things. And I think most of them honestly believe it a lot of the time.
I think you have to believe it.
Right. And then 10 years later, you look back and go, "Oh, that was, we might have made some good movies, but that wasn't one of them."
Yeah. Well, you tell people what you think they want to hear, and that's when it gets scary.
Yeah.
And I remember doing Christian radio, and someone asked me, "So you've travelled the world and you've been to the poorest of the nations. Which country do you think needs Jesus the most?" And I was in my back garden pacing around, and I took a deep breath and thought, I don't know if I can say this. And I said, I think that would be America.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think they went to a commercial break pretty soon after that. But there was part rebellion there, but, they were wanting, India, because, they're Hindus and they believe in cows and there's poverty. That was the answer that I was compiling in my head, thinking, what are they looking for? What's the answer they want?
Right.
And so I think as an artist, you get caught in the hamster wheel of creation, which is, let's create something that someone else wants.
Yeah.
And let's make someone else happy. Let's feed our audience,
sure,
so that they can feed us.
Yeah.
And that works.
There's a utilitarianness to for-profit creativity. Like, it serves a good purpose. We need that. But it's also very difficult to not stay locked in it and not have it affect the art, which it can't or shouldn't. Or I don't even know if that's true. But
it's not about you.
That's right. Sorry. Dang it. I'll cut all this.
No, you won't.
No, I won't. All right. So, you're married again?
Yes.
You married a belly dancer?
A ballet dancer, yes. So, there is a T on the end of that.
Oh, sorry. Ballet.
Ballet.
Yes.
Yes. Also, she is amazing, but also she is a ceramicist, which you say that to anyone, any male of our generation, and they immediately think of Ghost.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's so.
Have you done that yet?
What, been a ghost?
No, well, I mean, recreated the scene.
No, I haven't.
Oh, come
Grow
on.
up.
No,
It's an art form.
Well, yeah, but it's also very intimate.
No. So she is a very talented ceramicist, and I have learnt so much from her.
Yeah.
Even the art of ceramicists. Ceramics.
Yeah.
Don't cut that out.
I wasn't sure if I should correct you or not.
There is so many variables and so many. She tells a story of being at college, at university, and she decides that she's going to make a 48 set dinner set for her parents.
Oh my.
And she is hardcore. She set out to do it. She was weighing the clay. She was getting everything together, and she could not get things all lined up properly. The bowls were different shapes and different sizes, and she was just getting totally frustrated. So she went to her tutor, says, "Can you help me? What am I doing wrong? I'm trying to create this identical piece, and I want it to be perfect." And he says, yeah, I've got a great solution for that. He says, "Get in your car and drive to Walmart." He says, "There's aisles of the stuff and it's all exactly the same." And I love that picture because I have lived most of my life trying to be perfect. And for one of the first times in my life, I've found somebody that does not want me to be perfect and does not need me to be perfect. And so that has changed my world. And so I am so thankful that I'm not perfect.
That's a good place to wrap it up. I have 3 questions I ask everybody. What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of not mattering.
In the sense that you won't be remembered, or in the sense that you didn't impact?
When I say that, I realize that there's a lot of ego attached to it. So, but I am afraid of being invisible. But I also love being invisible. That's the beautiful paradox of who I am.
Yeah. What do you regret?
I regret not having any tattoos.
Really? We can solve that problem. This is a solvable problem. Yes. We'll be right back.
I don't want to be arrogant enough to say that I don't have any regrets, but going back to what my psychologist said, if you could go back, what would you change and when would you change it?
Right.
I don't know how to answer that. There are many things that I would do differently if I had the chance now.
Yeah.
But I am so thankful for where I'm at today.
Right. I get that. Absolutely. Who is God?
I want to answer that really eloquently, but I don't know how to.
Don't go for eloquence.
God is mysterious. Who is God? I have my Sunday school answers.
Sure. Is that your answer?
Part of my answer.
Mm-hmm.
I have my Christian musician radio station answer.
Mm-hmm.
But today, I have my answer that my father would approve of. I have my answer that my brother would approve of. I have the answer that I would want my children to hear.
Yeah.
But I don't know who God is, but I know He is.
That's good enough.
No, that's not good enough, but it's good enough for now.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay. If it sounded like we were having a good time, well, that's because we were. And yes, there were a couple of inside jokes in that. I apologize. We just can't help ourselves, you know? You get together with somebody you've known for a decade or more, and it just kind of happens. The way Jon tells his story is so filled with grace and kindness. And I know he said he's learning gratitude. Man, I have never experienced someone as gracious as him. I want to be more like Jon Thatcher when I grow up. If you'd like to hear more of what he's doing, of course, you can go listen to any of the old Delirious records, or you can check out his current project, Jonathan Jackson and E Nation. You can find their music on Spotify and Apple iTunes, or just go to jonathanjackson.com. If you'd like to see what Jon looks like, you can find out by Googling him, or you could come to our website. I'd prefer you do that. www.butenoughAbout.me is the website. You can see my portrait of Jon there. You can find other episodes, links to the various places to listen, or you can listen directly from the website. It's all there. You can also drop me a line through the website. I'd love to hear what you think of the show. I'd love to hear stories of listening to it, or if you know someone or are someone whose story we should have, come on, shoot me an email, tyler@butenoughAbout.me. That's my email address, and you can get that through the website. Additionally, you can look us up on social media. You won't be able to find Jon Thatcher on social media. He's not on there, but you can find his picture on our social media sites. That would be Instagram.com/ButEnoughAboutMePodcast or Facebook.com/ButEnoughAboutMePodcast or now on TikTok at ButEnoughAboutMePodcast. Why am I on TikTok? I don't know. Send help. Anyway, you can check us out on there and let us know what you're thinking. Also, please, please, please share the show with people. If you, I mean, at least once a week, I see someone's post that says, "Hey, I'm looking for a new podcast to listen to." Guys, please tell them But Enough About Me. And if somebody else has already suggested it, doesn't matter. Pile on. Say it multiple times. Be that person. Please, we need you to help spread the word. If you'd like to advertise how much you love the podcast, you can do so with one of our beautiful 4x4-inch yellow stickers. I've seen them on water bottles and on my laptop and on bumpers and windows, and they're great. I love them. You should have one. And guess what? They're free. All you have to do is shoot me an email or contact me through one of the socials, and I will get that to you free of charge. I'll even cover shipping because we're just that nice. That's how we roll. If you like our intro music, well, that's care of Mr. Jace Hackman. You can hear more of his work at jacehackman.com. The design work and that bumper sticker were created by Mr. Casey Jones. You can see his work at iamcaseyjones.com. Typically, this is the part in the show where I tell you to go find somebody you don't know very well and get them to tell you their story. But here's what I'm going to change it to today. And this is because of Jon. Jon is a perfect example. I've known this man for well over a decade. I have walked with him through some of his roughest periods, including his divorce. And I know him very well. And yet, I still learn new things every time I hear his story told. I hear something different. I catch a different moment. There's something else that stands out, some other part of the man that I get to meet. It is so worth it to hear people's stories, even if you've heard them before. So, here's what I'm going to say this time. Go find somebody you know. Find somebody you know very well. Buy them a cup of coffee or a glass of whiskey. Sit down and ask them to tell you their story. My name is Tyler Andrews. But enough about me. Pause. It's not you. There's a wasp.
I wondered what you were looking at. I'm not scared of... Oh, he's...
I was watching. He climbed up right behind you. And I would have stopped you had he made any...
I'm not afraid of being stung.
Well, that's good, but... I don't want any wasps in my office. So... Oh, he just climbed up behind... Son of a...
I'm still rolling.
Oh, yeah, we are. Dadgummit. Well... Oh, I hear him. He's flying around up here.
He's behind you.
Yeah, he's...
He's there.
Oh, there he is. Huh. Alright, well, he needs
How
to
are you going
land
to get
again.
out? That's going to move though when you hit it.
Oh, I'm not going to hit him there. I'm going to wait till he lands on the wall. Let's see how strong IKEA furniture is.
Got one shot.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't
Do you want
grab
me to
that.
support you?
Yeah, just make sure I don't fall too far. There we go. Alright. Ugh.
For the record, he is squashing a wasp with his Birkenstock.